Hey, crank up your dinner table with this impressive, easy to make shrimp bisque. Right here today, Moonshine Place Kitchen. Got this beautiful shrimp bisque. Let's get at it. We're going to start off right away with, we're going to go ahead and put a little olive oil in a sauce pot. Okay. Coat the bottom of the pan pretty well. You want to get a full coating on the bottom of the pan. And what I've done is I've gotten local fresh, not frozen, local fresh shrimp. These are more like large size shrimp, and I've de-peeled them. I've pulled all the peels off. And we're actually going to saute the peels. So in the pot, the peels go. The reason for this is we're going to create a little bit of a roux for our soup. It's going to be a delightful little roux. While those are sauteing, I got 2.5 cups of water and 3 chicken bouillon cubes. In they go, if I don't splash it all over the place. So in they go. I'm going to let those sit and just start to intermingle a little bit and let them get going. But here in the pan, I'm going to go ahead and cook these shells down until I get a nice flavorful oil. I might add a little bit more oil to this. What I really want is a very, very strong flavor in that oil from these shells. The shells have an incredible amount of shrimp flavor in them. I realize everybody just peels the shells off and throws them in the garbage, but when you're cooking like this, you should utilize where your best flavors are coming from, you know? And that ought to do the trick. The shells are pretty red. They look pretty good. Let's turn this up another minute. That's going to do it, okay? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to strain these shells into this bigger sauce pot and through a strainer. I'm going to get all the flavor, everything in the oil out of it. It's actually got a beautiful little roux going. I'm going to get that all out of there. And we're going to start next by sauteing our shrimp in that roux and really start to build that flavor. Don't go away. We're going to be right back. This thing is going to go quick today. Come on back. All right, welcome back. Our shells have cooked up beautifully. I've been draining them. I've let them sit and drain. I'm actually squeezing them down to get all of that essence out of those shells. It's a beautiful thing right there. And it smells delicious already. I've got a little heat going on this big sauce pot, but we'll get rid of this right now. And there's our roux, if you can see in there. In the overhead, you'll see it, the overhead shot. But there it is, a beautiful roux to get this soup started, this bisque. So we'll get rid of them shells. The next thing we're going to go ahead and do, make sure I got enough heat on here, is we're going to go ahead and saute our shrimp, okay? Right in there. Shrimp goes in. Get rid of this bowl. All right. So this doesn't take long. We'll get this shrimp all sauteed up. Now, you can use anything from 2 to 3 pounds of shrimp. These are large shrimp. Normally I get these large shrimp on sale around $9, $9.50 a pound. Today they weren't on sale, but I decided to do it anyway. You can go with the smaller shrimp too. The reason why I generally don't go with the smaller shrimp is it's a lot of work to peel 3 pounds of smaller shrimp versus 2 pounds of the bigger. But it's completely up to you. It doesn't really matter which shrimp you use. It does matter. You want to avoid buying previously frozen shrimp if possible, because your flavor won't be the same. And I'm not trying to get too critical on all this, but it really matters. Like I said before, I go through the trouble to get, in my case, locally fresh caught shrimp. But you can get farm-raised shrimp or whatever, but try to make sure it's not previously frozen. I'm not going to sit here and knock Walmart or any of these other stores that sell these bags of frozen burned shrimp, but it's kind of useless for flavor. You're not going to get any flavor out of that shrimp. For this bisque to be good, you really need to get a lot of flavor out of it. Now there's one little key here when you're sauteing the shrimp right now, is you do want to saute it and get some color in it, but you don't want to finish cooking it necessarily, okay? Because half this shrimp we're going to end up putting in the blender and having this part of the actual stock of the bisque, and the other half is going to recook in the bisque later. So we want to get it sort of pinked up, but not totally cooked. All right, and we still have plenty of little of our roux flavor there going on the bottom. Okay, that looks kind of good enough. So let's get rid of the shrimp out of the pan. I'm going to turn that down. Matter of fact, I'll shut it off temporarily. And we'll get the shrimp right out of the pan. All right, and we're going to reserve these for now. We're not going to use these just yet, but we certainly want to keep that roux going in the bottom. I know you've heard me say that several times, but that flavor is intensely good. We got all the shrimp coming out. The last two guys, there they are. And we still got a bit of roux in there, which is great. At this point, 4 tablespoons of butter. Turn the heat back on. Let's get 4 tablespoons of butter cooking. Okay. And we'll get that heated up and going. I got to get that to melt a little bit. And that's going to add to a lot of flavor, as well as help saute our vegetables. Okay, she's starting to go now. That looks pretty good. So in goes 1 complete. You can use a Vidalia, you can use a white or yellow. Don't use a red onion in this. It's not going to have the right flavor. In this case, we used a white onion. Okay, right in it goes. But a big onion. Dice that up pretty good. It doesn't have to be perfectly done. Like I said a few minutes ago here, we're going to be putting it all in the blender at some point here, coming up. And it's all going to get blended together. Here we got 1 big celery stalk. And in my case, I use 2 small, but it don't matter. You got to get some celery in there. And I use 2 small carrots or 1 big carrot. You just want to get some carrots, some celery, some onion. Basically, they call it the trinity of vegetables. So you want to get that in the pot. And we're going to saute this down a little bit until they get tenderized just a little bit. Now, I haven't added any salt or pepper or anything yet. We're going to do all that a little bit later. Okay? All right. So I'm going to go ahead and saute this down until that gets tenderized up. We've got our bouillon cubes that are starting to get happy in the water. Everything's looking good. Come on back. This thing is really going to take off in about 1 minute. Come on back. Okay, welcome back. Our Trinity is doing great. That's sweated down beautifully. It's all tenderized up really good right now. So what we're going to go ahead and do is 2.5 cups of water, and those 3 chicken bouillon cubes are going in. 1 cup of white wine. You could use sherry. You could use brandy. It's all to your taste. Sometimes I like to use a little sherry, but I'm not talking about that cooking sherry you buy in the market. I'm talking about buy some good sherry. Go to the liquor store and buy something decent. And 1/2 cup, and this is optional. You don't have to put the rice in, but it helps thicken up the broth a little bit later. It gives it a little body, which I like a little body. And after we go ahead and blend this up, little bits of rice stay in it. Really little bits of rice, and it gives it a little texture on the tongue, which I like. Anyway, 1/2 cup of white rice, plain white rice. In it goes, okay? Now I'm going to go ahead and bring this back to a boil. A light boil. Now I'm going to let this simmer for about 10-15 minutes. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take a minor little break here, and we're going to flip it right back on here, and that 10 minutes will go by like that for you, but for us it'll be 10 minutes. So don't go anywhere. We're going to be right here. Don't go anywhere. Alrighty, welcome back. And our trio and our rice and all of our bases to the soup, the stock is all in a really good position right now. It looks so tender. Smells phenomenal. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a little bit of bay leaf. It's about the value of 1 big bay leaf. I'll just throw a little in there. I'll let that soak in for a while. I'm going to do my best to retrieve that later. But for now, if I don't retrieve it, whoever, when you sit down to eat the soup, the bisque, you're going to find out that you'll have a little bay leaf in your soup, but that's the way it goes. But a little bit of that bay leaf flavor goes a long way. Okay. Also, 15.5 ounce, 16 ounce can, stewed tomatoes, cut tomatoes, whatever. If you're going to use whole tomatoes, cut them in half, try and get the seeds out of them. You don't have to cut them any further. Once again, we're going to be blending, but try and get the majority of the seeds out. It actually comes out to be about 1.5 cups of tomatoes and sauce. In it goes, okay? Right in there, it goes. So we're going to mix that in, okay? Then our shrimp is back in the action, okay? At this point, we're going to take roughly half our shrimp. If you're going to sit and count it, you need to get help, okay? So don't sit there and count it. For me, I'm just going to do it by eye, about half the shrimp. Now I'm going to have to sit and count it, right? So, now, let's say that that's about, I'll give 1 or 2 more. I bet you I'm over the half amount by a couple. All right? So in the shrimp goes. Now, I am going to start to season the bisque right now. And it's lovely. It's a really lovely looking thing right now. First thing we're going to do is a little Tabasco. You need to give a shot of spice. You got to have something in there, a little zing, a little pick-me-up when you have this bisque. You can use any kind of spice you want, but you really need a little hot shot, okay? In this case, I'll use, Cholula is my favorite hot sauce, but I'll use the Tabasco in this. You can decide on your own. What I'm putting in now is probably the better part of half, maybe 3/4 of a tablespoon. But I'm going to adjust that later. Towards the end, when we're finishing up, probably before the cream, I'll go ahead and taste it, and I'll give it another shot at Tabasco. Maybe after the cream, we'll see. But I always taste it at the very end to see if I need a little bit more Tabasco or not. Salt, sea salt. Soup is a very hard thing to get rid of the salt if you put too much salt in. I always say the same thing. Pepper, you can go nuts with the pepper. Obviously, you don't want to make anybody sick, but you can go nuts with the pepper. I like a lot of ground pepper. But the salt, you got to be careful. Always allow people at the table to salt their dishes the way they like them. When a dish comes out and it's over salted, it's junk as far as I'm concerned. Pepper. Now, normally I would use a ton of pepper. In this case, I'm not going to. I'm just going to use enough. And what enough is about that much, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and bring this all right now back to a boil, a light boil, not a rolling boil, a light boil. And we're going to let this simmer once again for about another 10 minutes. But we're getting real close now, getting real close. After that 10 minutes, we're going to be putting it in the blender and getting it all blended up and basically be finishing this dish up. Get a little cream in it after that and get it finished up and get it dished. It's that simple. This is a crazy good dish. It's a beautiful thing. I'll see you in a minute. Don't go away. Welcome back. Boy, do we have something. It's a beautiful looking bisque already. Really nice. The broth is thickened up a little bit on its own. It's really, really looking good. It's all looking really good. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and shut that off. Now, here comes a challenge. We're going to try and blend up this hot bisque. We're going to try and blend this up. And in actuality, I see some of those bay leaves. I can pull some of them out if I can. Now, if I see any of those bay leaves at this point, I'm going to grab them and get them out of there. Make a mess on the counter. You don't mind, right? You don't have to clean up the counter. I do. So we'll grab a couple of them and get them out. Anyway, the gamble is this video about to get exciting? Am I about to blow the top of that blender off? Or am I going to do this like a professional and get this ground up without too much trouble? One thing I've learned doing this is you don't do a whole lot at once. You do a little at a time. So we're going to go ahead and put a little bit in. Okay. Get the lid on there. Now let's see if I wreck this. Ready? Here we go. So I'm going to blend this up till it gets sort of a fine consistency, but I don't want to lose all of the value of the rice. I like to leave a little bit of the value of that rice. Okay. Let's see what we got. Oh, that looks good. That looks really, really good. You can see in the overhead shot, that really looks nice. You can see the consistency. You see it's got little bumps in it from the rice. That I like. I like those that little texture. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in a separate bowl on standby, ready to go back in the pot in a minute. Okay? So let's go ahead and get some more of that. And that ought to do it, my friends. That ought to do it. Right back in the pot it's going to go. We'll get all that back in there. One of the things you can do with this soup, I wouldn't advise freezing it, but one of the things you can do with this soup is it could be a main meal, or this could be part of a beautiful, we had a brunch series recently, and this would really, really work well as a dish on a brunch table, where you have, you have your different breakfast foods, and then you have your obviously for a brunch, you have lunch foods, which are salads. And we did lox, if you remember, we did lox, which was excellent. We served that with goat cheese, but why not have a little bit of shrimp bisque on the side on a brunch table? That would be a special thing, wouldn't it? Okay, we got all of our soup back in, all of our stuff back in. So now we're going to grab the other half of the shrimp that we reserved, and that's going to go back in. So we have some nice big pieces of shrimp in there as well when we go to dish it up. All right, so we don't need that. We don't need that. All right, so heat goes back on. We'll get that back on, and what we're going to do is we're going to return this to a light boil. Now the cooking time has not been that long. It's really not a long time to cook this, okay? If you really think about it, you have a little bit of prep time, probably about 15 minutes of prep time. And you have 10 minutes at one point and 10 minutes at another of simmering. And in this case here, we're going to bring this up to a boil again. It won't even be 10 minutes. All right, she's already starting to get some heat in it. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and dribble in my cream while mixing the soup. Now I got 2 cups of heavy cream here. I'm not going to put it all in at once. I don't want it to curdle. We've talked about, as soon as I say curdle, I push half of it out of the pot. But bring this in, little at a time, mix it in. Now that'll add that beautiful creamy texture to the soup. Okay? We got 2 cups of cream in there. It's got a beautiful, beautiful, colorful texture. It really, really looks fantastic. All right, so what we're going to do at this point, for the very first time, is I'm going to take a little taste of this. And it's going to be hot. I need a little bit more salt and pepper. So we're going to add a little bit more salt, a little bit more pepper. And I'm going to give it a little bit more Tabasco as well. Let me get this. I just turned the heat down a little bit. I really don't want this to boil hard at this point. But I'm going to go ahead and give this another little shot of Tabasco. This soup is just about ready. This bisque is just about ready. We're going to plate this up in a minute. It's going to be a beautiful thing. You're going to want to see this. Don't miss it. Don't go away now. You're stuck with us this whole way. Don't go away. Wow, and there you have it. There you have it. Lobster bisque. Beautiful lobster bisque with a little bit of basil and a couple of homemade croutons. Boy, is that a beautiful thing. That really comes out nice. I want to thank you once again for joining us here on the Moonshine Place Kitchen, and we certainly look forward to serving you again.